You check your phone 47 times a day. You compare your morning to someone else's highlight reel. You wonder, quietly, why some people seem lighter than you. Not richer, not luckier, just lighter. The real answer is far stranger than motivation or mindset. For almost 80 years, one team of scientists has been watching this exact question unfold in real time. It started in 1938. Harvard researchers picked hundreds of young men, some Harvard sophomores, some boys from the poorest neighborhoods of Boston, and decided to follow them for the rest of their lives. Not for a few months, for decades. Interviewers visited their homes. Doctors tracked their blood pressure. Researchers even talked to their children and later their grandchildren. It became the longest-running study of human life ever conducted. Psychiatrist Robert Waldinger eventually inherited the project, and what he found broke almost every assumption people had about happiness. It wasn't income, it wasn't fame, it wasn't even health in the way you'd expect. Some of the wealthiest, most accomplished men in the study ended up isolated and miserable by 70. Some of the least successful, by conventional standards, ended up among the happiest people Waldinger had ever interviewed. The difference wasn't what happened to them. It was what they did, quietly, every single day, for years. Small, repeatable things, at 30, 40, 50. Nothing dramatic. Nothing that would make a headline. So what were they actually doing? Your brain was not built for constant comfort. It was built for pattern. Whatever you repeat, your brain assumes is important, and it rewires itself accordingly. This is neuroplasticity, and it is not a buzzword. It means the small moment you choose today becomes the automatic instinct you have tomorrow. Happy people are not born lucky. They are, in a very literal sense, trained. Here is the first habit. They move their bodies, even briefly, every single day. Not for six-pack abs. Not for a marathon. Just movement. A 10-minute walk changes the chemical makeup of your brain within minutes, lowering cortisol and releasing endorphins. It doesn't need to be intense. It barely needs to be noticed. Your ancestors did not choose this. For most of human history, there was no such thing as exercise because there was no such thing as sitting still for 8 hours. They had no option but to move, hunting, gathering, walking miles just to eat, carrying water, building shelter before dark. Your body still expects that motion. It was assembled, generation after generation, around the assumption that you would use it. When it doesn't get that motion, something subtle goes wrong. Not always something you can point to. Just a heaviness, a fog, a low hum of unease that feels emotional, but is actually in part physical. The happiest people in Waldinger's study weren't gym obsessives. They just refused to let a day pass completely still. The second habit is a stranger. They write down what went right, not what went wrong. Psychologist Sonia Lyubomirsky has spent her career studying what actually raises happiness levels long-term, testing interventions the way a chemist tests compounds, and gratitude writing kept appearing at the top of her data, again and again, across different populations and different ages. Why would something so simple work so consistently? Because your brain has something researchers call a negativity bias. It was built by evolution to scan constantly for threats, because missing a threat could get you killed, but missing a good moment never did. A rustling bush might be a predator. A beautiful sunset was never going to eat you. So your attention, shaped over millions of years, learned to lean hard toward danger and drift right past beauty. The result is a brain that remembers every insult in vivid detail and forgets most compliments within the hour. You can receive 10 kind comments and one cruel one. And the cruel one is the only voice you hear at 2 a.m. Writing down 3 good things a day is not positivity for its own sake, and it is not denial of real problems. It is a deliberate correction of a very old, very outdated survival mechanism that no longer matches the world you actually live in. Third, they protect their sleep like it's sacred. This one sounds obvious. It isn't followed like it's obvious. Most people treat sleep as the first thing to sacrifice when life gets busy, the flexible variable, squeezed for one more episode or one more hour of work. But chronic sleep restriction doesn't just make you tired. It measurably shrinks your capacity for emotional regulation. The very next day, studies on sleep-deprived subjects show heightened activity in the amygdala, the brain's threat detection center, the same ancient alarm system that once watched for predators, alongside weakened connection to the prefrontal cortex, the part of you that keeps panic in check and lets you pause before reacting. In plain terms, 4 hours of sleep doesn't just make you groggy. It hands the controls of your brain over to the part of you built for fear, while quietly switching off the part of you built for reason. You become, quite literally, more reactive, more irritable, more fragile than the version of you that slept 8 hours the night before. Fourth, they invest in relationships on purpose, not by accident. Back to that Harvard study. When Waldinger's team finally crunched 80 years of data, comparing cholesterol readings, income brackets, marital status, career achievement, one variable predicted long-term happiness and health more than any other single factor. Not cholesterol levels, not career success, not even how much money the men had accumulated by retirement. The quality of close relationships. People with warm, dependable connections at 50 were the healthiest and happiest at 80, both emotionally and physically. Their bodies aged more slowly. Their memories stayed sharper. Isolation, on the other hand, behaved almost like a slow toxin associated with faster cognitive decline, weaker immune function, and shorter lifespans overall, in some cases as damaging as smoking. Think about why that would be true. Your ancestors survived in small bands, tribes of maybe 150 people at most, and a lone human on the ancient savanna was a dead human. Belonging wasn't emotional decoration back then. It was the actual difference between eating and starving, between safety and being torn apart by something faster than you. That wiring never left you. Somewhere underneath every modern convenience, your nervous system still treats disconnection as danger. Fifth, they let themselves feel bored sometimes. This one goes against everything modern life is built for. Every idle second is now filled. A video, a scroll, a notification, a podcast in one ear, while you fold laundry. Silence has almost become uncomfortable, something to be filled the instant it appears. But psychologist Barbara Fredrickson's broaden and build theory suggests something important happens. In unstructured, quiet moments, moments with nothing scheduled, and no screen demanding your attention, your mind wanders into creativity, into problem solving, into a kind of gentle self-reflection. That constant stimulation crowds out entirely. Some of your best ideas have probably arrived in the shower or on a walk without headphones, not because those moments are magic, but because they're empty enough for your mind to finally think without interruption. Boredom isn't empty time. It's processing time, the mental equivalent of digestion. Skip it long enough, feeding your brain a constant stream of input with no pause to absorb any of it, and something in you starts to feel scattered, restless, quietly overwhelmed, without you knowing exactly why. Sixth, they say no without guilt. Happy people are not the ones who do the most. They're often the ones who do less, but with intention Every yes to something you don't actually want, a favor, an obligation, a social event you dread, costs you a small piece of energy you can't get back. It seems harmless in isolation. One yes here, one yes there. But multiply that across a decade, and you get a life that looks impressive from the outside and feels exhausting from the inside. A full calendar hiding a person quietly running on empty. The happiest people studied across multiple well-being surveys consistently score higher, not on how busy they are, but on how aligned their time feels with what they actually value. Seventh, and maybe the strangest one, they expect less, not more. Ed Diener, one of the most cited happiness researchers in the world, sometimes called the godfather of happiness studies, found something almost paradoxical across decades of his work. People who set enormous, specific expectations for how happy an event should make them, a wedding, a promotion, a long-awaited vacation, were often more disappointed by it, even when the event itself went well, and by any outside measure was a success. The gap between the imagined feeling and the actual feeling became its own quiet source of unhappiness. Meanwhile, people who approached life with lower, looser expectations reported more frequent, smaller moments of genuine contentment. A decent cup of coffee, a conversation that went easier than expected, rain that held off just long enough. Your brain, it turns out, doesn't compare your life to some absolute scale of good and bad floating out in the universe. It compares your life to what you expected going in. Lower the bar just slightly, not out of pessimism, but out of realism. And suddenly, ordinary Tuesday afternoons start to count as wins. None of these 7 habits are impressive on their own. That's exactly the point. There's no headline moment here, no single breakthrough day, where everything changes, no dramatic before and after. It's 10 minutes of walking, 3 lines in a notebook, an earlier bedtime, a phone call to someone you love, kept short but kept regular, 5 unstructured minutes with no screen, a single sentence of no, a slightly smaller expectation, walking into an ordinary day. None of it looks like much in the moment you do it. That's exactly why almost nobody sticks with it. And exactly why the people who do end up so far ahead of everyone else, decades later, without anyone quite noticing how they got there. Stack these small choices daily, for years, and they compound the same way debt compounds, except in the opposite direction, building not stress, but resilience, not exhaustion, but a kind of quiet, durable calm that doesn't depend on circumstances staying good. Now, you already know at least one person like this. Someone who doesn't have a perfect life, by any measure, whose job is ordinary, and whose house is nothing special, and who has faced real losses like everyone else, but who somehow seems steady inside all of it anyway. You've probably wondered more than once what they know that you don't. They don't know something. They just do something, small, and they keep doing it, long after most people would have quit or forgotten. That repetition is the whole secret. Not a mindset, not luck, just habits. So small, they're almost invisible, compounding quietly in the background of an ordinary life, until one day, without any dramatic turning point at all, you look up and realize you've become someone lighter. Not richer, not luckier, just lighter.